We'll call the regular meeting of City Council today to order for Monday, May 27th. Nice, beautiful summer day. And our first order of business this morning is our delegations. And our first delegation this morning is Sherman Hanson and Melissa Wager are here from the Dawson Creek Society for Community Living. And today we're going to do Access Awareness Day proclamation. So we'll invite them up to the front. Good morning. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, very good.
Good.
Thanks for coming this
Thank
morning.
you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. How are you today?
Too bad, sir.
Good, good. So it's my pleasure this morning to read the proclamation, and we'll do that and then give you a few minutes to... Whereas accessibility and inclusion is essential for ensuring that all community members have equity in opportunities and the ability to fully participate in community life. And whereas accessibility affects all aspects of community life, physical, social, and economic, including employment, transportation, recreation, housing, and other opportunities. And whereas we all have a role to play in ensuring that our communities are as accessible and inclusive as possible, now therefore I do hereby proclaim Friday, June 7th, 2019 as the day for individual and group action to promote positive ways of working together to create an accessible and inclusive community for all of our citizens as Access Awareness Day in Dawson Creek.
Thank you.
There you go. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
There you go. Congratulations. I'll leave the proclamation with you guys, and the floor is yours.
All right. Well, hello everybody. I'm Melissa Wager. I work with the Dawson Creek Society for Community Living.
I'm sure Brenda Hanson with the Society Co-worker.
And we are just talking today about our Access Awareness Day barbecue. This is our annual event where we celebrate inclusion, diversity, and universal design in our community. Not just for people with disabilities, but for all members of our city. And so we invite everyone to participate with us on June 7th from 11:30 until 1. We thank you for the opportunity to come and speak today, and we're looking forward to volunteers from the city to come and barbecue with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming this morning.
Thanks.
Best of luck with your barbecue.
Thank you so much, Dale.
Our next delegation this morning is Amanda Neufeld from the City of Dawson Creek in attendance regarding our Swim to Survive Day proclamation.
Ross, you want to do that one? Amanda couldn't make it.
For Ross DeBoer from the City of Dawson Creek. Welcome. Good to have you here today.
Good morning.
Nice to
Good
see
be
you.
here today.
Whereas the Life Saving Society is a national charitable organization working to prevent drowning and reduce water-related injury through our training programs, Water Smart, public education, drowning research, and aquatic safety standards. And whereas the majority of people who drown had no intention of going into the water. For swimmers and non-swimmers alike, immersion is sudden, unexpected, and often silent. And whereas International Life Saving Federation research findings from around the world offer clear evidence that teaching survival swimming skills taught in Swim to Survive decreases drowning, potentially reducing the mortality and morbidity from aquatic incidents by 50%. And whereas through Swim to Survive, the Society gives all grade 3 and grade 7s the opportunity to learn self-rescue skills. This program is taking place across the country to focus media and community attention on all the skills necessary to survive an unexpected fall into deep water. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim June 5th, 2019 as Swim to Survive Day in Dawson Creek. Thanks, Ross. This actually, when we first saw this come a couple of years ago, what a great program, what a great initiative, and we really appreciate, obviously, partnership with the folks at the swimming pool aquatic center to be able to put this on for the kids in our community and region.
Thank you, and there have been some really fantastic results from the Life Saving Society just with this basic education piece for the
Yeah,
kids.
absolutely. Great, thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
And our next delegation this morning is Aaron Oliver, Chelsea St. Pierre, and Tiffany Hentnall from the city in regards to National Parks and Recreation Month proclamation. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Welcome. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Come on in. Perfect.
What does that look for?
What was that look for? Were you looking at me? Whereas in British Columbia, we are fortunate to have a variety of parks providing countless recreation opportunities for residents and visitors from around the world. And whereas recreation enhances quality of life, active living and lifelong learning helps people live happier and longer, develop skills and positive self-image in children and youth, develops creativity and builds healthy bodies and positive lifestyles. And whereas the benefits provided by recreation programs and services reduces healthcare and social service costs, increase tourism, and curb employee absenteeism. And whereas our parks, open space, and trails ensure ecological sustainability, provide space to enjoy nature, help maintain clean air and water, and preserve plant and animal welfare. Now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim June 2019 as National Parks and Recreation Month in Dawson Creek. So there was a smiley part in there for me where it said help to preserve plant and animal welfare in our parks. We have a fox in our neighborhood that we would like to not preserve, but
I'm sorry.
getting our cats. Anyway, that's another story. Welcome, you guys. Thank you for coming.
So I just wanted to remind everyone about the Community Better Challenge, and that from May 31st to June 16th is when, if you go onto the Participation app, they will tally how much our community is active by going through the postal codes, and we can win up to $150,000 for the city towards recreation, as well as you can win freebies. So I won a $500 Amazon card, so
Nice.
you guys can get some stuff going that way. So we're going to be doing that, and then they're also participating in the Park and Play event.
So the Spring Park and Play is June 2nd from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Kitchen Park, with the backup being at Kin Arena. And this is the kickoff to the National Recreation and Parks Month. And this year we received a $1,000 grant from Participation Community Better Challenge to help us host this event. This event includes prizes donated by Participation, where participants can receive a prize with proof of the Participation app and signing up at the event. And there will be a bouncy castle, scheduled instruction in yoga, Zumba, and jitterbug swing dancing, as well as a tattoo parlor sponsored by Here to Health Wellness Clinic.
And then to cap off the month, June 26th is when we're starting our second annual Shell Summer in the Park. So Shell Canada gave us another $5,000. So that will be every other Wednesday night at one of the parks. The first park will be the Kin Park Playground, and then we'll have the rest posted on the city website, Facebook. So
That's great. Great job of summer fun.
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Your worship, I have a question. Is it June 1st or June 2nd? Poster says June 1st.
June 1st.
June 1st, okay.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. And then the other thing I wanted to say on the participation, that groups can actually join too. So South Peace Junior Soccer has joined, so every kid that hits the field every hour is being calculated for
cool.
Dawson Creek. So if you're in a group, sign them up.
We need to get the ball, the little league
Well,
in.
we've encouraged our parents to do 2 laps at break time, so
Amy.
I have signed up.
Amy's all over it.
Great job. Awesome. Thanks, you guys.
Thank
Thanks so much.
very much. These are for you.
Thank you. Our next delegation this morning, 2.4, is our friends from the Dawson Creek Disc. Daniel and Kevin and Wyatt are here this morning to give a little presentation. Morning, you guys. Before you start, it's good to see you. It's good to have you here this morning. I think back, I don't know when it was, 3 or 4 years ago, when you first made the pitch to City Council to install these temporary baskets at the park and begin this phenomenon that we know today as disc golf. And so it's a pleasure to have you here again this morning, and looking forward to your update.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you. And nice to see you, Your Worship. I just want to acknowledge Councillor Earl and Councillor. How do you pronounce the last name? Kemp. Okay, it's not an easy one like really fun. First time we've seen you guys in your role, so thank you. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, we're going to try to keep it short and sweet today. I think Shantae presented our president's report a few weeks ago. Basically, the Disc Golf Club, our desire is to eventually hold a provincial level event. The Peace region has assets that very few other regions in Canada has, which is amazing cooperative city, amazing cooperative facilities like Farmington Fairways and golf course and RV park. And we just have so much land. We have Bear Mountain. We have the ability to host, world-class events even. But in order to do that, we need, do the baby steps. So one of the things that we've offered the British Columbia Disc Sports Society, which is the provincial sport organization type body in BC, is host a qualifying event for Zone 8. So in sports, there's 8 zones. Zone 8 is actually as big as Zone 1 through 6 combined, so it's a pretty big area. So it would be a great advantage for Dawson Creek to be able to host the Zone 8 qualifying event for the BC Provincial Disc Golf Championships. If we do this well, then we're setting ourselves up well to host the provincial championships in the future. And one of the ideas that we had was we're still going to do our Battle of the Peace, which at Farmington, but we wanted to do a provincial qualifying event before the cutoff, which is in August. So that's why we want to do our tournament, which is a proposed tournament, is the Mile Zero Throwdown on August 3rd. That's when Toby Keith is coming to town. And we've been working with Tourism Dawson Creek on ways to, snowball one event to another, attract people from Edmonton or Calgary or Prince George. They want to go see Toby Keith. They like disc golf. You can come to Dawson Creek, make a day and a night of it, kind of thing. And so we came up with a mock-up. This is our first request. It's just our Dawson Creek Disc Golf Club logo, and we kind of incorporated the Mile Zero silhouette and the City of Dawson Creek logo. So we needed permission in order to use that to promote this tournament, if we do have it in Dawson Creek. Yeah, so this is the logo right here. So it's pretty much just our regular logo and the Dawson Creek logo. And we like the idea of the Mile Zero Throwdown because Toby Keith is coming into town, and he's had a tour called the Throwdown before, and it's kind of like the country theme, and so we think it's kind of neat. And then the other thing is we always like to do things different for tournaments, right? Attract people into Dawson Creek who's maybe played our city course before. So we want to host the tournament at Kin Park on August 3rd. We've talked to Recreation and Shantae and those folks there. And as far as they know, there's no other events going on August 3rd. And we've designed a course back in Kin Park all the way back in 2014. We've had like pop-up courses, like 5-hole pop-up courses and 9-hole pop-up courses at Kin. But we kind of want to, do something different. So we're hoping to do 18 holes at Kin just for a day for the tournament. And in order, so that's our second request is access and not like complete monopolization of the park, but in some cases, if we're playing and we're throwing near structures or near facilities at Kin, we would have permission to say, hey, we're going to throw. Can you give us? Can you heat us for a couple minutes while our group throws? We're expecting maybe 40 people or so for the tournament.
Can I speak to that quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent a week and a half down in the Lower Mainland, and what was interesting about some of the existing courses in the Lower Mainland, Mundy Park in Coquitlam, Passive Park in Langley, if anybody's ever been there, is the disc golf courses are set up in multi-use parks that attract a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. People out jogging with baby strollers, people out jogging without baby strollers, softball going on in an adjacent field. And what we found was that you grow the game, whatever your game happens to be, softball, disc golf, whatever, through that cooperative model where people are acknowledging other people in the park and just kind of making way for them. And it, you know, it turns into not an exclusivity type of thing. That's not what we're asking for, but just the opportunity to have our 18-hole course set up that day. Some leeway, as Daniel noted, to say, hey, can we place through, but not to disrupt the day-to-day activities of people using the park.
Great. Question. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we absolutely did get presentation, and so we've got all the material council will have. Questions from council? Anyone? So we go.
Oh, I just wanted to say, really unique design on the logo, and I do like the way you've incorporated it together. So whoever did that, congratulations. It looks very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that was our graphic designer, but we got the idea from Ryan McIver.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're gonna talk to Ryan.
Okay, well, I hate it. All that.
Maybe don't say that.
Councilor Earl?
No question. Just want to thank you guys for the effort you put in bringing this sport to Dawson Creek in an organized way, and all the luck on growing it and continue to grow it. I think you're doing a great job.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilor. I appreciate it. One last thing I just wanted to note, Daniel and I, well, not just Daniel and I, we changed our league night from Monday night to a league day, Sunday afternoon, to attract more children and families, and we've seen the desired increase in participation doing it on Sunday. Yesterday, mid-round, we ran into two players from Alaska, Homer, Alaska?
Yep.
From Homer, Alaska.
Wow.
The cool thing about disc golf now, the PDGA, as Daniel noted, Professional Disc Golf Association, we're not professional, we go with, but their official app is now linked into the PDGA, an official app called UDisc is now linked through the PDGA's website, which means anywhere you go in the world, you click on UDisc, you can find a local course. So these two guys were from Homer, Alaska, were on their way to Montana playing disc golf courses along the way, happened to find Chamberlain Barberway on UDisc, and we met up with them, and it was just a really cool way to say welcome to the city.
Good job.
Awesome.
Great job.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you,
Obviously, we
guys.
appreciate
Thank you.
everything has been talked about. We appreciate the effort you put into building and helping support our community and the event and sport tourism strategy that we have. We'll bring your request back under Mayor's business later in the
And I
agenda.
just want to say, on the record, looking good, Your Worship.
Thanks.
I'll let your wife know when I see her.
Oh, can we get a reaction?
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Our next delegation this morning, 2.5, we have Mr. Scott Maxwell, Executive Director for the North Region, and Dean Daniel, Associate District Manager of the Peace from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. Good morning, you guys. Good morning. It's very good to have you here this morning. It's good to see you, and I appreciate you coming in this morning to give us a bit of an update.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and certainly before we get on here, I would just like to acknowledge that this will be Dean Daniel's last week with the Ministry of Transportation, so he is moving on into a well-deserved retirement. So he's whatever he says today, please don't make me own it.
Kind of a risk to have him here today, isn't it?
It's all good. It's all good.
Congratulations.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about this project. It is one of our crown jewels. So over the last 6 years, we're in the process of, or have completed 25 bridges in the Peace region. A lot of that has to do with the flooding we've received specifically in 2011 and 2016. Of all the projects, though, this one is certainly the most complex. It's going to be more than likely the most expensive, and it's going to be, I believe, is obviously going to have the greatest impact to the community, just in terms of the amount of traffic it receives and how central it is to the community of Dawson Creek. So we are very excited by this project going forward. So the one thing I want to do too to start it off is just a big kudos and a thank you to both Kevin Henderson as well as Devin Arrow. They've been fantastic to work with in terms of city. There's a lot of interactions between the city and our ministry on this project with utility works and a handful of other things, so I just wanted to pass along a big thank you. For those who remember the 2016 event quite well, this was one of our more iconic sites. I think people who remember the photo, it was a little white car, it was almost pushed off. It was salvaged, but it was there. And fortunately, we were able to make a strong case for the Disaster Financial Assistance Program with the federal government to fund a replacement. It was a little bit in question because technically the culverts didn't fail because they were still operating after the event, but we did make the case that obviously that the safety risk that those culverts posed and relative to the risk we had there, it wasn't appropriate. So I'm not sure who's controlling the presentation, so we'll just move on into the next slide.
Oh, you.
Oh, do I? Oh, it's me. There we go. So just the scope of the project is to replace functionally what we have there, but replace the existing culvert systems that we have with the bridge. As we discovered with the effects of climate change, but also just upstream flows, the existing culvert system was not able to accommodate the flow that we had there. Obviously, that was apparent in 2016, and I think all of our systems, the DGR in 2011, and I know there was a handful of city infrastructure that was affected in 2016 as well. And we're just moving our way down, and of course, this dovetails quite nicely into our Rolla Road project, which is also underway. So it's following the completion of this project, this stream should have ample capacity to be able to handling those kind of capacities. We've also taken the opportunity, though, to improve some of the pedestrian infrastructure that we're going to have on the bridge. So both of the sidewalks on either side are going to be wider than what we have existing, and we've also had the ability to add a pedestrian infrastructure underneath the bridge so that it can get people across the highway from one side to another safely. And then, of course, it's going to relocate the existing underground utilities while we're doing that as well. So this is the improvements for the pedestrians and cyclists. So as I said there, it's going to be a 2-meter sidewalk on the right-hand side on the figure you see there, and it's going to be a 3-meter wide path on the other side. So that's wider than what we currently have. Right now, the sidewalk standard's in essence about just over a meter. It's about 1.2 meters, which is 4 feet. So this is significantly wider. So certainly for people who are riding bikes, have people with strollers, multiple people, it's going to be much more comfortable for them to go there. And then, of course, we've got the pathway that's going to be going underneath the bridge structure. And the pathway underneath the bridge structure was really a function of the road safety audit that we worked on a couple of years ago, and it was just acknowledging that we needed to give people some opportunity to get across the highway without necessarily interacting with traffic. So this is our schedule. This has been a very complex project to put together. So, it's the piece. So if we didn't have geotech issues, that was probably not doing something right. So that's been a big part of why we're at the length of time it's taken us to get this ready. So we are planning to tender through this summer. And then it's going to be I call it a 2.5-year construction window. So there'll be work that's going to start this summer, mainly the directional drilling for the utilities and getting those all in place. And then really into next summer and the summer after will be the main construction of the bridge itself. And I'll just kind of explain how and why that is with the next slide here. So the reason why it's taking us that length of time is that we've made a traffic management a key focus. We understand that there's a lot of traffic that uses this, and it's obviously central to the city's operation and people being able to get to work and home and services, grocery stores, all those sorts of things. So we've made a commitment to leave the highway open at minimum 2 lanes at all times. There may be from time to time a small closure with a truck coming in and out, but they'll be small scale and modest, but it'll be open 2 lanes lanes at all time. And there will also be, one side will also have pedestrian at all times as well. So there will always be 2 lanes, 1 pedestrian pathway open. The way that the construction is going to work is it's going to be building half the bridge at a time. So in year 1, or I guess you could say in 2020 is when we build the one side, it'll be actually building the bridge on the one side, so it'll be closing down that side, building the bridge up, and then in year 2 it'll be doing the opposite. So we'll be shifting traffic over onto the existing half a bridge and then moving it all over. The reason why we have to do this in 2 years as opposed to 1, which we would have preferred, is fisheries windows. So we've only got a month in each year that we can do that, and it just wasn't enough time to be able to do this. That being said, it's going out to a contract tender. This is our best idea of how a contractor may build this. If they have another plan or they want to get this done sooner, we're certainly would be open to that. So we're hopeful we'll get a creative contractor that might even do this sooner than what we're giving them time to contract for. And then just the last one here just really demonstrates the pedestrian pathways, and we were really thoughtful of not just the pathways that go down the highway network, but also how they tied into existing municipal trail connections there. So as we go through here, it's going to be, as I said earlier, it's going to be at least 1 pedestrian pathway open, and they will be linking together with the existing sidewalks and pathways that the city maintains. So that's it for my presentation. I'd open it up to any questions.
Thanks, Scott. Questions for council? So I'll kick off because I got a couple. Thank you. Obviously, we're, as you say, this is a big project for the community, and so 2 pieces for me is the first one is we are working on our flood mitigation work. We've done the first phase. We've got the second phase. The hydrology of the creek in terms of changing this and transitioning the flow from culverts to the bridge will change that hydrology, and we want to make sure that we have that engaged with the ministry. And I don't know if that's been a part of your guys' conversation with our staff or not. I got to ask that.
I don't know the details specifically, but I know that we have been working together pretty closely, and obviously hydrology is a huge part of this project. So yeah. I can't answer specifically, but I can confirm that for you.
Okay. And the next one then is the utilities. I know I've had some conversations with staff about that because that's a main utility corridor for our sewer. And the intention is because of the change, it's going to require a lift station, and I want to just have your comments on that.
Yeah, it's one I know was a large talking point in the project team as well, and because this is federal funding, we're limited to engineering and construction standards of the day. So it's one where it's not a question of us making the improvement. So had there been, say, an existing engineering standard that the city had brought in and said this is our standard for our city, it's one that we could make the case for the federal government and go in and put it in. But to my understanding, I don't believe that there's a specific standard within the city that demonstrates that it's anything more than what the I guess you could say the template municipal standards are. So we had to go with what the standard was for municipalities. And for us, we're in the same boat. We would have probably preferred to do a few different design differences on the bridge and pathways itself, but we're limited to modern engineering standards with what we do.
Yeah, and I guess, Scott, for me, I guess the question is about we now, because of this, will have to install a lift station on that sewer line, and it's those ongoing, because of that changes, it's that ongoing now cost for the city in having to operate that lift station. That's
right. It's our hands are somewhat tied. This is one of these ones where there's a pretty typical agreement between the province and municipalities that we follow. Certainly, Dean has worked on a lot of projects in the past where this is pretty typical. So
yeah, it is fairly typical. Once we go through on some of the major projects, we would put in all the infrastructure, and then the municipality would be going good for the ongoing maintenance.
okay. So basically, the provincial standard or regulation or whatever is once the design and engineering for the new infrastructure is built, any of those associated impacts to us and our utilities become our accountability.
Correct.
Okay. And the last one I want to ask is the, and I just kind of was, as I was seeing your slides, the traffic lights at 8th and 110th. And I don't know if those have countdown pedestrian crossings for the pedestrians going across 8th Street. But I know certainly, will those traffic lights have to be replaced, or will there be new traffic lights as a part of this construction? And if they are, would that pedestrian countdown be a consideration in there if we have to replace them?
Yeah, certainly the countdown would be considered.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, that would be outside the scope of this project, so I don't believe that the traffic signals are being replaced, but regardless, the one thing we'll take away from this is that we can add pedestrian countdown timers to existing facilities, so I can definitely ask the team to have a look into that.
Yeah, the only reason I ask is because it was, when I looked at the schematic rendering of it, that the traffic lights on the corner of 8th and 110th on the east side of the intersection, and that's where the traffic lights are for that if you're going northbound. And so I just thought maybe there's, and they look like they're right in that new sidewalk that will be constructed. So they're going to come down. I just wondered if they're going to be replaced.
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
I'm pretty solid on that.
Okay.
Because that would be outside the scope.
Thanks. Councillor Javetkov.
So do you have a firm date for the tender yet?
We don't have a firm date, so we're just finalizing the design right now. We're trying to give as much time this summer as possible so they can get a good year in. Specifically this year, you'll see a lot of the directional drilling that's going to happen. Summer is what my team's told me, so we're really just trying to get that out as quick as we can. So it's probably at least, I would say at least July would be the earliest that we'll have it ready.
And so the main construction for phase 1, if I can use that term, of excavation and building the first section of the bridge, or the first half section of the bridge, would begin in 2020.
That's correct.
And so the big impact to our community in terms of traffic impacts to that is going to be 2020.
It's going to be the directional drilling will have some impact on traffic, but we will maintain the 2 lanes at all time as we're doing that. And the key with doing the directional drilling first is maintain the utilities. So
Sure.
Obviously we can't take the utilities out of the existing fill until we have the new utilities in place.
Yeah. Other questions? Councillor Wilbur?
I don't have a question, but one thing I do hear lots about is the pedestrian right away through there and just timing of lights, that kind of stuff. And you kind of mentioned it about the countdown. So I'm happy to see that it's been kept in the plan to have those walkways underneath for people to get through, because I have personally seen a gentleman in a wheelchair stuck halfway across the road when the lights change, and now he can't get across. So to have that other access, I think is great. But I would like to just reiterate what the mayor said with the timing of those lights, that be looked at, because it's happened lots where this gentleman's got stuck halfway across the street, and then the traffic goes, and there he is. He's sitting there. So that would be, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, it's always a challenge. It's interesting when you know, obviously with the kind of traffic you have here, you've got lots of lanes, and this is a 5-lane section. You have a left turn lane, 2 lanes, and either way, that's a long ways to go. In a car, it doesn't seem like much, but when you're in a wheelchair, or if you're someone who has mobility concerns, so I'll definitely ask the team to have a look at the signal timing.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Other questions? So I have one other, if we can, or if everybody's done on the 8th Street project, and I want to talk about in the winter months, 8th in Alaska for us, snow removal, and contractors clearing snow. He's pushing her east and west, north and south off the road, and so then our crews come along and are dealing with the sidewalks and push it back out on the road, and it's kind of who got there last as to where it ends up till Mother Nature comes in April. So I know we've got a new contract being proposed this year, but if there's one thing that there's got to be a solution for us to find some discussion about how we deal with this in the long term, because it is kind of, it's very, very difficult for our staff, and I know it's difficult for the contractor, the maintenance contractor. We've had one go at it one time, or a couple times we've had some discussion about it, but I'd really like to engage in terms of having some conversation when we have the new contractor in place this fall, or this summer, I'm assuming. And maybe if we can get together with your folks and the contractor and our staff to have that discussion about, is there some other options for us to consider that are outside the scope and outside the normal pattern of snow removal? Because it is, I get it, it's difficult for, you guys put it in your contract, here's what we do, here's what you need to do. Maintenance contractor lives up to that, and then out it goes. It's tight, the space is tight, but it's just cost prohibitive for all of us to be doing what we're doing in the long term.
Yeah. No, pushing around the same snow in multiple times doesn't make sense. So the one, I think this is probably a very advantageous time to bring this up. So we do have a new contractor, preferred proponent for the area. So it's they're by Argo Road Maintenance is their name. So their existing contract is in Kamloops. They've also had the Penticton Kelowna area in the past, but they've won the area here. So, but they're also right in the middle of fine tuning their what was it? I'm drawing a blank here. Their QMS, so basically their quality management system of how they operate. So I think that it could actually be a great time in terms of sitting down with city staff and going, okay, how do we want to do this?
Yeah, we, as I say, for us, I think it's just a question of saying, like, we get it, we understand there's issues around how tight it is, where do you put it, who puts it there, but there's got to be some opportunities for us to kind of have that conversation. And so perhaps if we can make that request when maintenance contractor is in place and fully engaged, and if we can meet with you guys and them and our staff to have some discussion about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll certainly arrange that.
Good, thank you. Anything further for council? Good. So thank you. Again, we really appreciate it. I know we've been trying to get you on for a bit, and this 8th Street project, it's such a significant project for you guys and for our community, and long term, hopefully, we see the never having to deal with that flood issue at Site D again.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much.
Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it. Have a good summer.
Thanks.
So that's the end of our delegations. If we can just take 1 minute, 2 minutes, and we'll try to get Councillor Parslow on the phone, and then we'll begin. I'll get this down. Thanks for calling in and being available. So back in, and our next item of business is our new councillor business. Councillor Wilbur.
Thank you. I asked staff to put these slides that were presented at NCLGA during the Caribou session, and the reason I did is because we had one panel that had success stories, and this one was from the McLeod Lake Indian Band, as well as we had the mayor from Vanderhoof regarding white sturgeon. So I just wanted it there really for my colleagues to look at that weren't there. There are other links that are on the NCLJ website regarding opioid crisis and housing. So those links weren't available at the time to get them on here, but I just wanted it there for my colleagues to look at and to understand that I know we've had lots of discussions about caribou. I know Councillor Lekstrom's, working on stuff with the caribou, but this was a great success story, right? That is considered part of our region. So I really just wanted it out there for the public to look at if they wanted to, and for my colleagues that weren't able to attend NCLGA, because I think sometimes when these type of issues are coming and we're trying to work our way through them, it's great to see that something exists and that it's working very well. So that was all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other new councillor business for anyone? Councillor Kemp.
I just wanted to mention last week I attended the Minerals North in Chetwynd conference. It was great speakers, great event. I'm glad I went. I also wanted to note I had attended the dog park meeting since last council meeting, and I just wanted to kind of follow up. A bunch of the community got together. They're interested on 15th Street, the ball diamond there just by the walking path, of turning that into a temporary location for a dog park. There was a lot of community support. A lady named Callan Robley, she's kind of spearheading the project, and there's a lot of interest in it. Right now, she actually went to Pet Value and spoke with the manager, and the manager has wanting to be take on the idea, wants to be part of the project. Lots of fundraising. She provided a huge list of business contacts for people that have donated in the past for projects like this. So it would give an opportunity for the funding of the project. So between the Pet Value and the SPCA, I'd like to partner along with that temporary location. Obviously, we'd like to have a dog park closer to the new location of the SPCA, but this kind of being a temporary location. So Pet Value is interested in hosting events. They've spoke with a fencing company that's offering a discount for the future location. So there's lots of community financial support, money going towards maintaining lawn mowing, other financial costs. There's people in the community that are willing to go down and, be on poo patrol and clean up the garbage at the location, so kind of maintenance of that as well. All donations can go through the SPCA, so they'll be kind of monitoring it that way. And they're kind of in the process of setting up a bank account and having that managed. So the committee's wanting to do monthly meetings, so it'll be the second Wednesday of every month at 6:30, kind of getting together to get the project. So there's lots of planning going in right now, and hopefully that will be a temporary location if it goes ahead.
Great job. Councillor Wilbur?
I just a question on that, and I don't know if any user groups have talked to the city, but so I've gone by there, I don't know how many times in the last few days, just heading down to soccer, but there's been actual teams playing in Barbary Park. So I don't know if they're just neighborhood people using it or if it's one of our user groups, but there's been people playing baseball in that diamond like every night.
Duncan?
So through your worship, council hasn't been presented with a proposal to actually use that as a dog park yet. I expect that's forthcoming, and we've heard some buzz about it. One of our recommendations would be there are a lot of informal users that we're unaware of because they don't register, and just some kind of notice to say we're considering this. We don't know who may be using these facilities, and provide us your feedback before that final decision is made.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, but I just wanted to I was shocked actually to see people out there. There were teams out there playing baseball. So
yeah, I think there's 2 or 3 diamonds that we no longer are. That was last year, right? We had no longer taken on the maintenance or upkeep of.
Reduced, yeah. To your worship.
Yeah.
they may just be practicing, but just note to.
And I think we brought this back for the temporary use last year, I thought, for 15th Street or one of them, for a temporary dog park.
We'll have to double check. I don't know that it's received a council resolution yet.
I believe so.
Okay. So we'll have that back. Councillor Kemp's working with them, and we'll have that back for our next council meeting to have council do a consideration. And structure is being set up, and the committee's being set up, and they're doing their stuff. So they're looking for a temporary location. So great job. Thank you. Any other new councillor business? Thank you. So we'll move to minutes. The minutes of our regular meeting of council for May 13th for adoption. Councillor Wilbur, second. Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any business arising out of the minutes? Correspondence 6.1. We have a letter from Northern Health regarding public health approach to non-medical cannabis use. And I think this follows from about a year or so ago when we were considering it. So just raising it back up and saying there's some considerations here.
Mayor, I'd like to move that we receive information.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Earl. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.2, we have a letter from Jessica Kula from the Dawson Creek Hospital Foundation regarding a request for a donation to the annual charity golf tournament. Councillor Wilbur?
Just through you to staff, did we not donate to this before, a golf club or something?
Duncan?
Through your worship, we have a putter and we have done some city swag out of the swag room previously and have that ability to do that. We do have some putters left.
Okay.
Yep.
Councillor Wilbur, move that we
Yep, I would
grab
like to
something
move.
out of the tickle trunk.
Yep.
I second it.
Second, Councillor Kemp. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Although we did reduce the amount of money we're putting
Yes.
into
tickle
for
trunk.
2019 for our tickle trunk, right? 6.3, we have a letter from Gordon and Robin Johnson, residents, regarding request to be added to the city's Spring Boulevard cleaning policy. Duncan, do you want to speak to this?
Sure, and I'll get some help from Kevin, who may need a microphone, so Councillor Parslow come up, so Councillor Parslow can hear him. But in short, this property is on the corner of 108th and I believe 20th Street. This property has not been added in the past because there is a park on the west side of the property, and we pull the snow into the park. Typically, our policy addresses properties that receive snow on multiple corners, maybe a frontage and a side due to an intersection. The concern is if we were going to remove the snow from the 108th portion of this property, there may be another or a number of residents also on 108th that receive the same amount of snow that may wish to have their boulevard cleaned as well. Kevin, have I missed anything? That's essentially the gist of it.
Okay. Council. Councillor Javetkov?
Move that we receive this for information.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Wilbur? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 6.4, we have a letter from Tina Cronin, resident of Dawson Creek, regarding a letter or a vision that she has for the future of Rotary Lake.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we receive this information.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Earl? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 6.5, we have a letter from Melissa Love, city grant writer, regarding a request for a grant application for the Ken Borek Aquatic Center. Councillor Javetkov?
Move we provide support.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Earl? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 6.6, we have a letter from Melissa in regards to a request for the South Peace Historical Society, looking for a letter of support. Councillor Wilbur?
I would move that we write a letter of support.
Thank you. A second? Councillor Kemp? All in favor?
Well, I
Opposed?
have a question about.
Oh, sorry, Charlie, go ahead.
The next item of business is another request to NDIT for $15,000. Can somebody explain the distinction between the two? I'm all for this project, I just wondered about the two applications.
Duncan?
So through your worship, 6.6 is an application to NDIT, 6.7 is an application to the Peace River Regional District for the same project, and I believe for the funding required and not covered if the NDIT grant is received.
Thank you for that. I missed that. Thank you.
Thank you. So 6.6 we just did? Sorry, you threw me off. Brandon?
Just call the question.
Question? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 6.7, we have a letter from Melissa in regards to a grant application by the South Peace Historical Society to the Peace River Regional District.
I would move that we write a letter of support.
Councillor Wilbur, second. Councillor Earl. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7, reports. We have 7.1. We have report number 19072 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding our scheduled financial information, which is our annual requirement by legislation for the Sophie report.
The mayor made that recommendation, the report that 12072 from the Chief Financial Officer, the 2018 statement of financial information be received, so the council approve the city of Dawson Creek 2018 statement of financial information is presented.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. Discussion? Referred to commonly as the sunshine list, and it'll always that transparency of information for public organizations and crown corporations and entities. Any discussion, comments? Councillor Earl?
I just have a question, Your Worship, with respect to when the people's total remuneration is listed. For those that are getting overtime as part of their remuneration, is there any way to distinguish that? Just because, I don't know, it might help alleviate some of the criticism, or you know, if people know someone's working, okay, they made X amount, but it was actually based on, you know, 60-hour work week because we're either understaffed or there's unexpected, something like that, just because I know a lot of people sometimes catch a lot of guff for this, and you never like to see that.
One of the aspects of working in a public organization is you're subject to the Freedom of Information legislation, and we have to disclose that amount that they're paid, both in terms of remuneration as well as benefits, et cetera. And so that's the difficult part. We don't break down how much they've received for in their total remuneration for other aspects of it, right?
Okay.
Duncan?
Yeah, through your worship, I mean, that's something that obviously we track, but for the purpose of this report, it's just a lump sum total, and that's to ensure that transparency piece, to ensure council's aware of total payments made to employees and contractors, essentially, and other pieces.
Any further comments, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.2, we have report number 19078 from the Parks and Facilities Manager regarding a request for quotation for a janitorial supply contract. Councillor Javetkov?
Move that report number 19-078 from the Parks and Facilities Manager, request for quotations 2019-12 janitorial supply contract be received. Further, that council award RFQ 2019-12 to Northern Janitorial for a 3-year term commencing June 1st, 2019 and ending May 31st, 2022.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. .3, we have report number 19082 from the corporate officer regarding our 2018 annual report. Councillor Earl.
I move that report number 19-082 from the corporate officer regarding the Dawson Creek annual report for 2018 be received. Further, that the City of Dawson Creek's annual report for 2018 be made available to the public for review and comments. Further, that June 24th be designated as the annual meeting at which time council will receive final input from the public before considering final approval.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Kemp. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.4, we have report 19085 from the Water Resource Manager regarding our request for quotation for the reservoir vegetation management. Councillor Wilbur.
I'll move that report number 19-085 from the Water Resource Manager regarding request for quotations 2019 to 21 reservoir vegetation management be received. Further, that the City of Dawson Creek award the contract to AgroWorks Services Incorporated for the bid price of $24,544.14 in 2019, $24,544.14 in 2020, and $24,544.14 in 2021, excluding taxes.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Kemp. Discussion? Duncan, do you have any comments in regards to this, or does administration in regards to, there's a fair swing in relation to the 3 bids, and it just seems...
So through your worship, this is our current contractor, AgroWorks, so they're very familiar with the work. They've competed or completed that work in the past. This is slightly higher, I believe, than the previous price, but they're very familiar with it, so we don't have concerns.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.5, we have report number 19086 from the Water Resource Manager regarding request for proposals on our lift station assessment.
Now I'd like to make this recommendation. If I may.
Thank you.
Report number 19-086 from the Water Resource Manager, the request for proposal 2019-14 lift station assessment be received. Whether the City of Dawson Creek award the proposal for NPE engineers
Thank you. Seconded? Councillor Wilbur. Discussion? Duncan, do you, administration want to speak to this in terms of,
Sure. So through your worship, this was a request for proposal, slightly different than a tender. We essentially outlined what we were looking for, and they submitted proposals on how they would achieve that, and how exhaustive they would reach into the assessment of our lift stations. We have a matrix. That matrix looked at their capabilities, their work plan in particular, and the cost of their services, with cost being the highest rating out of all of those areas. And MPE scored the highest. They submitted the most thorough plan, most in-depth plan that'll serve the city well moving forward with that 10-year capital replacement and repair plan. Kevin, anything missed there? Good.
and so the scoring piece, because they, even though they were the highest price,
Yep.
it was those other components is why we,
You betcha. And that proposal price made up 40%. So in the other areas, they scored very high.
yeah, good. Thank you. Any other comments, questions from council? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.6, we have report 19087 from the city planner regarding a development variance permit 1907 from Bora Construction for 1616 99th Avenue. Councillor Wilbur?
I will move that report number 19-087 from the city planner regarding development variance permit number 19-07 Boric, 1616 99th Avenue be received. Further, that the development variance permit 19-07 be approved to vary zoning bylaw number 4115/2011 by reducing the interior side yard setback of the RS2 zone from 1.2 meters to 0 meters for 1616 99th Avenue.
Thank you. Seconded? Councillor Earl, discussion? Councillor Wilbur?
I think my understanding, this is like a deck or something off a garage or something, is it?
So through your worship, I'll ask Kevin maybe if he wants to jump up and just explain this one. There is an existing encroachment on the neighbor's property, and so
Yeah, so through your worship, it's a garage with stairs and a small deck off of it, and they found that, I think, my understanding is the owner is in the process of wanting to sell it, so they need to legalize it. And so they need to bring that back. And so it's still going to be within the setback, so that's why the variance is required.
Perfect, yeah. I just
Thanks,
wanted that
Kevin.
for clarity. Thank you.
Further comments, further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.7, we have report 19088 from the city planner regarding development variance permit 1908 for Redwell Tech Limited, 705 Highway 2.
Mayor, I'd like to make this, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
I move that report 1908 from the city planner, redevelopment variance permit number 19-08, Redwell Tech Limited, 105 Highway 2, be received. Further, the development variance permit 1908 be approved to vary sign regulation bylaw number 4369, 2018 by increasing the maximum allowed sign area for freestanding signs from 18.6 meters square to 24 meters square for 105 Highway 2.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Javetkov, discussion? Questions? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.8, we have report 19090 from the utilities manager regarding request for quotations for the asphalt management program. Councillor Javetkov?
Move the report number 19-090 from the utilities manager, request for quotations 2019-15 asphalt maintenance program be received. Further, that council award RFQ 2019-15 to Peters Brothers Construction Limited for a 2-year term up to a maximum of $212,242 in 2019 as approved in the operational budget.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Earl, discussion? Councillor Earl?
Just a question, between the two bids, there was quite a bit of space. What accounts for that?
Duncan?
So through your worship, Peter Brothers held this contract previously, and their bidding was on page 1. We're getting some very strong pricing, as we saw last meeting with some of our tenders on this paving component. There seems to be some other contractors in town that are bidding on this, and it seems to be pushing the pricing down. Also, we got out a little earlier this year. Council pre-approved some of the capital works and some of that program, and we're seeing the benefit of that with some lower pricing. So that's a good thing, and hopefully we can keep doing that moving forward. Anything else, Kevin?
The only thing I would mention is Peter Brothers is local. DGS has to truck everything from Taylor, so that drives costs as well.
So for Councillor Parslow, Peter Brothers is local, and DGS has to truck that material from out of town.
Councillor Earl?
Quick follow-up. So what, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but what did we initially budget for this? What do we?
Yeah, so through your worship, 212,242 is what we budgeted for. The reason it says 270,000 in that total tender price, because it's a maintenance program, we have to mock up a bit of a program based on where we would do a little more work and a little less and get that pricing. However, at the end of the day, it's just the funding that's in the budget is used, and that's 212.
Okay.
Thank you. Further comments, further questions? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.9, we have report 19091 from the Utilities Manager regarding a request for quotations for the concrete repair program.
Mayor, I'd like to make that recommendation.
Thank you.
Report number 19091 from the Utilities Manager. We request a quotation 2019/18 concrete repair program being so the Council Award RFQ 2019/18 from the Auckland Contracted Limited for 2-year term at $255 a square meter of sidewalk and $260 per linear meter for curb and gutter.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur. Discussion? Questions? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And 7.10, we have report 19092 from the corporate officer regarding our 2019 policy review. Councillor Javetkov?
I'd like to make a motion that we defer this item to another meeting when we're all here.
Okay, thank you. Motion to defer until our next meeting. Seconded, Councillor Parslow. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Bylaws, nothing. Mayor's business. So a couple of things over the last couple of weeks. I got asked to attend a Vital Link ceremony by BC Ambulance, and it was a ceremony where 2 of our employees from the Kembark Aquatic Centre were recognized and received an award from BC Ambulance. Vital Link is the award. These 2 employees were working at the Kembark Aquatic Centre when they became notified there was an emergency. A gentleman in significant health distress in the parking lot. They left the station at the aquatic center, went out and performed CPR on the individual until the ambulance personnel were able to get there and able to maintain the emergency procedures to the individual and transport him to the hospital, and where their efforts in saving the life of the individual were evident. And so they received this award from BC Ambulance, and so I was really pleased to be able to be there and participate in it on behalf of the city and council, where we have 2 of our employees who that training, those life-saving skills, and obviously left the pool to go perform this emergency health services to an individual. So, and I have their names on my stuff, and I didn't put it on my report, but I will get that for council and ensure you have them as well.
Veronica Murphy and Amanda Neufeld.
Thank you. So, anyway, congratulations to our staff. I got asked to arrange a meeting last week or the week before with the Bank of Canada, and the regional director and her senior manager from the Bank of Canada, stationed out of Vancouver. They have an office there. Came in and they do these tours around the province, seeking to get some understanding and information in regards to economy and impacts that are impacting GDP and all the different things. So I spent about an hour with them, and they were really interested to learn about Dawson Creek and foundation of our community and what drives the economy and what are factors impacting people's inflationary pressures on lifestyle and all of that stuff. Is very interesting. And so I spent about an hour with them, and I really appreciated they took the opportunity to come to Dawson Creek because they wanted to come into our community to get that sense. So they were interviewing some business people and other that. So like I say, it was really, really worthwhile, and I have some material from them that I'll be happy to get and share with you guys. They left some printed stuff, and I'll make sure it gets circulated to council. I got asked to participate last week at the Canada LNG Gas and LNG Conference. It was a conference that's been put on by the last 5 or 6 years. Probably in the early days it was put on by the provincial government, by Ministry of Natural Gas really drove it, and that was when there was 22 projects alive and well in our province. And this was a 3-day conference last week. International, global in attendees, and certainly Western Canada was the emphasis for the LNG industry, and it really drove that. But there was a lot of information and a lot of plenary sessions from different speakers, and so there were 2 or 3 things that I really took out of it. And I was asked to speak on a panel on Tuesday morning, and that's how I got there. And there was a lady from China there who is the executive director of their Sia Energy, I think was the name of their company. And what stuck with me was she did a great presentation, but what stuck with me is China migrating off of coal. Represents 60% of their energy consumption is by coal, and they're absolutely motivated to move their country off of coal onto the cleaner burning energy, natural gas. And so they're looking for long-term supply. They're looking for long-term agreements and contracts. And but the statement she made, I get asked a lot, what's our demand? What's the forecast for us in terms of natural gas and that cleaner burning energy? And her comment was, I respond to it all the time, our needs are infinite. When you look at the amount of natural gas that they need by transitioning off of coal, and how they do that comes from the global demand and supply, and also the increasing demand that they have. She expects their increasing demand for consumption of natural gas is between 8 and 10 billion cubic feet of gas per day, is what their annual increase in demand will be. So if we think about LNG Canada, Kitimat LNG, and perhaps one other large project of that size that would produce 2 to 4 billion cubic feet of natural gas per day, those 3 facilities would only meet the annual growth in demand that China has. India were there, and the Indian Chamber of Commerce were there. I kind of smiled about it because they didn't do nearly as good a presentation as the girl from China did, and basically what they said is, we have a lot of money and we want to do business. It was good. And Indonesia were there, and they did the guy there did a presentation. You get some takeaways from some of these conferences. I had no idea Indonesia had 280 million people, population on that island. Like, it's crazy. It's almost the size and population of the US. And so why is Indonesia, Malaysia, and China, and India, and why are we looked upon as the future of a trading partner for them as it relates to natural gas? Is because the transportation to particularly China is our advantage. The hurdle we have is transportation in Canada, of getting the gas to Tidewater and then shipping it. Our huge competitive advantage, and this was evident throughout the conference, was the Montney gas field is what gives us the competitive advantage. Our supply is such a world-class asset and supply. That's what's giving us the opportunity at potentially competing on the world stage. So anyway, it was a really, really worthwhile 3 days. I'm happy I was there and participated, and it was very worthwhile and valuable, and got some presentation material out. And I'll make sure that I talked to Councillor Javetkov that we'll make sure we reach out to Chamber as well as to our Oilmen's Association and industry to set up some presentations where I can give this information back out as a benefit to our community. I spent $1,000 on hotel rooms, so somebody better get $1,000 worth of value out of that, or we'll make sure that we push that out. So that was that. Anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, I do, Dale. And notwithstanding what you shared, have you any ideas where the statements that I keep reading that China and India have either begun or have plans to developing up to 1,300 coal-fired generating plants?
Sorry, Charlie, I can't answer that. I have got access to this lady's presentation from China, and absolutely I'm going to make sure I get those presentations, and we'll circulate them back out, because that really is filled with some technical detail around that. She, in her graphs, absolutely was specific about showing what their current consumption of coal-fired energy use is, and what that makes is representative of in their total consumption and use of energy sources. And the other thing that she did a really good job of was depicting how much of their supply comes from LNG and how much comes from pipeline. And so that demonstrates the supply they get from Russia and other locations.
Yeah, I know, that's good. I just find it disturbing when I keep hearing about the further development of coal-fired generating plants.
And I think that's part of this challenge they have in meeting the demand for the ever-increasing demand of energy sources. And if they're restricted or constrained by the supply of natural gas as an energy source, then they look to the others, and that's coal is one of them.
Yeah.
And that speaks to how big the demand, their annual growth in demand is for energy sources in China at that huge population. And I think India the same.
Yeah.
Thank you. Saturday morning, I attended the COPA for Kids event at the Dawson Creek Airport, and a group of our local pilots get together. I think there were 7 or 8 planes of our local guys who volunteer a day and take the kids up for a ride in a plane for 15-20 minutes. I think they had 140 kids originally signed up for Saturday to go. They go in a chain of 7 planes for about 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, and the kids were all lined up there happily waiting for their chance to go for an airplane ride. And what a cool thing, and how good for our local association of airline pilots and users of our airport to provide that opportunity to kids in our city and region, and really want to express our thanks to them for doing that. I think the weather kind of got into a little bit of a thunder and lightning storm, so I think they may have had to cut it short a little bit. And but overall, I think they had in excess of 100 kids, my understanding, and our congratulations and thanks to them for doing that. Saturday night, I attended the Air Cadets 75th annual review, and so here's a group of a really very, very cool organization of Air Cadets, and those kids I always enjoy so much to go and see the discipline and structure that these kids get out of organization. Our captain and commanding officer, Kimberly Shipton's been the CO of the Air Cadet Local 353 Squadron for the last 5 or 6 years. And she's now been, had her 2nd or 3rd extension, and now the commander of the operations will be Lauren Stromquist. And Lauren will be the new captain of the commanding officer. And so I attended on Saturday night to the 75th annual review of the Local 353 Squadron. So congratulations to those guys. It was a real pleasure. They had the commanding officers from Victoria there transferring the commanding officer position over, along with our MP Bob Zimmer was in attendance as well. So I really appreciate the support to the organization. We had the Dawson Creek Disc Golf Club here today with a request of 2 aspects, one for our logo and one for the use of the park on August 3rd or 4th, I think, for a potential tournament. So council's wishes. Duncan?
So just, Your Worship, there is a policy regarding the city logo. So I just wanted to clarify that in order to allow that, you would be waiving your logo policy. And that policy was essentially put in place just to make sure that the city council approves any use of that
Okay.
logo. Did I miss anything, Brenda?
No, it does, through your worship, it does say in the policy that the logo should not be used in conjunction with others, but council always has the ability to waive the policy. It's just to maintain the integrity of the logo
Yeah.
and the colors associated with it.
Good. Thank you. Good information. Council. Councillor Dweckott?
I'll move that we provide the approvals for both items.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. I have one other item that's popped up that I forgot to put on the agenda for last week as I was away when we were doing this. And the Peace River Regional District has issued a statement, and it's a statement towards the First Nations community in regards to some hate that has been prevalent. And they've issued a formal statement, a formal letter in regards to denouncing that hate message that was going out, and I see some of the other communities in the region are doing the same thing. It really is one, I think, and Councillor Parslow has used the statement, keep separate issues separate. To me, this is a separate issue of we would never want to be in a position where we would be seen to be doing anything but supporting our neighbors and supporting the message that we denounce the hate. And I would like to have council's approval that I don't know if you've seen the letter that Peace River Regional District have sent out and circulated in regards to that, but I'd like to send that same message out on behalf of Mayor and Council. And I'm seeking council's approval to do that.
I would.
Sorry, Councillor Wilbur, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say I completely endorse us doing that, and if my colleagues haven't seen it, it is on the PRRD website under their news releases.
Moved. Sorry, Councillor Parslow, you would.
Like the second.
Thank you. Discussion, comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. So we may as well get through the rest. We've got just a few items left, and then we'll take a break for Committee of the Whole. So consent calendar, motion. Councillor Dweckott.
We approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. Second to Councillor Wilbur. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Strategic priorities.
Nothing to update, Your Worship.
Media question. So we'll adjourn now for 7 minutes, and get ready for Committee of the Whole. And now in for Committee of the Whole meeting and our Committee of the Whole reports. And our first item is our report from our Staff Sergeant, and we have Sergeant Commander in the house. So good morning, welcome. The floor is yours. And I mentioned to council before, that I just wanted to mention, it's absolutely been evident to me that our detachment is getting back into a position of staffing appropriately, and the profile and seeing the profile of the members out in our community, to me anyway, having observed it over the last 3 or 4 weeks, has been amazing and very, very good. And I want to pass that on to yourself and to Damon, that how good it is to see that profile of the RCMP in our community in a significant way.
Excellent. I'll pass that along.
Thank you.
Good morning. Okay, so this is a policing report for April 2019. So the detachment resource reporting. So during the month of April, we received a newly promoted corporal, Christopher Gallant, who came from Masset. So he's back, he's into work. So the detachment is fully staffed. The transfer of a new lateral constable GIS member is taking place. She's underway, just trying to sell her home on the Lower Mainland. And she's coming up here with 15 years service, so that'll help us out. So the detachment is currently working through the hiring process of a full-time term clerk position, with the hopes of having this person in place by June. Additionally, a full-time municipal CPIC clerk position has been advertised, and the advertise has closed and resumes are being reviewed. Crime trend reporting. So there have been 2,267 calls for service in the city of Dawson Creek and 635 in the rural since January 1st. This is a total of 2,902 calls for service. Comparative to last year for the same time period, this is a decrease of 2% within the city and a decrease for the rural of 7%. So to go through some of the files we've been having, so theft of vehicle, 5 calls for service where we had 9 the previous month, decrease of 44%. Theft from the motor vehicle, we had 3 calls compared to 6. It's a 50% decrease. Break and enter to a residence, we had 9 calls for service where we had 7 the previous month. It's an increase of 29%. Break and enter a business, we had 5 calls for service where we had 6 last month. Decrease of 17%. Assault with a weapon and aggravated assault, we had 19 calls for service, where we had 17 the previous month. Sexual assault or sexual interference, we only had 1 call compared to 4 previous month. It's a decrease of 75%. Drug possession, drug trafficking, we had 12 calls for service, where we had 14 calls the previous month, decrease of 14%. Drug overdose, we had no calls for service, where there was 2 the last month. Impaired driving, 24-hour suspension or IRPs, immediate roadside prohibitions. We had 37 calls for service, where we only had 22 the previous month. That's an increase of 68%. That's due to more proactive policing. Motor vehicle accidents, 25 calls for service, where we had only 24 last month. And mental health, we had a decrease of 40% from, we had 24 calls compared to 40, which is fantastic. So, a few files of investigations of interest. So, April 5th, on-duty members were on patrol when they observed a male slumped over the steering wheel while parked at a local business. Police engaged with the male suspect and determined that the male provided a false name. After further questioning, the male provided his correct name and found him to have several outstanding warrants. The suspect male was arrested, and with queries on the involved vehicle, found it to be stolen at the Grand Prairie. While booking the involved male into cell, he was found to be in possession of illegal drugs. And the male was charged with several offenses, among those possession of stolen property and possession of a controlled substance. On April 7th, Dawson Creek RCMP received a report of a suspect male with a gun chasing another male down a street here in Dawson Creek. Police attended and conducted an investigation identifying the suspects involved. The investigation determined that no shots had been fired, but a firearm had been involved. The search warrant was executed on the home, resulting in the seizure of several firearms, stolen property, and illicit drugs. A male suspect was charged with several offenses, which included, but not limited to, pointing a firearm, assault with a weapon, and uttering threats. On April 13th, Dawson Creek RCMP attempted to conduct a vehicle stop, but the vehicle failed to stop and accelerated at a high rate of speed in an attempt to evade police. Police did not initiate a pursuit, but conducted concentrated patrols in the area and soon located the vehicle. Police were able to box the vehicle in and arrest both the driver and passenger. The resulting search of the vehicle located drug trafficking, paraphernalia, and weapons. The driver was charged with multiple offenses, including flight from police, possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose, and possession of a controlled substance. April 13th, Dawson Creek RCMP received a call of a theft in progress in which the caller reported someone had just stolen their travel trailer and was seen driving away. The RCMP intercepted this vehicle at the scales out in Poos, arrested the driver, and charged him with possession of stolen property. Returned the trailer to its rightful owner. And April 18th, a member of the Dawson Creek RCMP was on patrol when he observed a parked stolen vehicle at a local residence. Investigation was initiated during which several suspects were arrested and the vehicle was secured. The subsequent search of the vehicle located numerous weapons and firearms. A search warrant was granted to search the involved residence from which numerous other weapons were seized, and this investigation is ongoing with charges anticipated. So in closing, detachment business rules continue to be developed, which will ensure police resources are appropriately assigned throughout Dawson Creek and the surrounding area. And on April 18th, one of our recruits, Constable Whitaker, volunteered and served dinner at a Nowakan Friendship Center for the Elder Easter dinner celebration. From April 20th to 23rd, Dawson Creek RCMP hosted a table at the Kiwanis Home and Leisure Show at the Encantas Event Center. And an application has been made and subsequently approved for additional funds for seasonal policing in the Dawson Creek area, with specific intent to provide more of the police presence at our nearby provincial parks and rural areas. Utilizing these funds, overtime shifts will be used to enhance police presence in the rural area, and in doing so will not affect police resources within the city of Dawson Creek. And for our first May long weekend, it was well used. Dawson Creek RCMP detachment is currently liaising with the Office of Crime Reduction and Gang Outreach within the Policing and Security Branch of the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General. The hopes is to address those less fortunate from or suffering from mental health issues here in Dawson Creek and area, whom frequently come into police contact but are not necessarily involved in crime, and to connect them resources which can address the root cause and get them on a right track. This strategy is still in the early stages, but is being developed with implementation expected to be over the next few months. And in closing, as well as always, we would like to express sincere appreciation to the City of Dawson Creek, the Village of Pooskoopi, and other surrounding communities for your continued support of our detachment and our crime reduction strategies. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Questions? Welcome, Damon.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late, Your Worship.
No problem.
I just got caught up until conference.
We've been humping through it this morning, so. Councillor Rupp.
So thank you very much for your presentation. Good to see you. You alluded to in the monthly crime stats that the impaired driving increase of 68% was largely a result of having a more robust staff. And I know, and maybe it's just the terminology used, so calls for service, but in the preamble to it, it says regarding calls for service and proactive investigation. So as you guys, as you stated, move back to a more proactive model as opposed to a reactive model, are there any other areas where we should expect to see a spike in statistics that don't necessarily reflect a worsening problem, so much as it reflects our capacity to actually address it appropriately moving forward?
Brian, let me answer this one. Calls for service, like I said, so calls for service and proactive policing are entirely different things, right?
Okay.
Calls for service are the calls that we're getting from the community for us to attend and assist, and proactive policing is us going out and doing things proactively. So impaired driving, the increase in impaired driving is proactive. The members, we have more members on the road now, more members doing patrols, more members intercepting drivers and processing impaired drivers. So the impaired driving is going to go up. The other files that you might see going up is drug trafficking charges, the drug possession charges, because we're intercepting people on the road. We're intercepting people walking around maybe at night downtown Core that shouldn't be. And we're intercepting more vehicles that are driving around, again, that maybe are in questionable areas at 3 or 4 a.m. and we're going to check those out and maybe come across more things. So drug trafficking, drug possession, impaired driving, anything else that you can think of? No. So I'd say those kind of things we may see increases on. And keep in mind, we're getting into the summer months now too, where our calls for service are largely going up right now. August last year is when we peaked. So we're seeing that right now. Our calls for service are climbing with the warmer weather. So you'll see increases in those due to more calls for service, but also because we're largely a lot more proactive now in stopping these vehicles. So.
Okay, cool.
Thank you. Thanks. Further question, Councillor Wilson?
And I know the mayor had mentioned it. We've seen you guys out there, and it's making a difference. And I know particularly on 17th, because I'm not getting asked by the school anymore to say, hey, we have heavy, high volume traffic at high speeds, and Mr. Stu Flynn hasn't called me at all about so it's working. The other thing, though, and I have said to the neighbors to call, but there seems to be a rash of backyard thefts on 93rd and 92nd, and so it's been kids' bicycles, gas cans, that kind of stuff. And I don't know that they phoned, but I did say I would mention it. So maybe just a little bit of presence in that area.
Yeah.
And maybe some have called, but it seemed like every other house has had a bicycle stolen or gas cans, lawnmower. I mean, it happens, right?
And I do believe there has been an email sent to the members about
that,
address.
yeah.
Somebody has phoned in.
Okay, so yeah, I did ask them to. I know that I live close, so they like to tell me, but I did tell them that probably you guys were the right people to call, but that I would mention it, so.
Thank you. Further comments, questions? David, I mentioned to Sergeant Commander before you got here that it's been evident to me when seeing the high visibility of the members in our community over the last month, and the more we travel around, the more we're seeing the profile of the RCMP in our community, and it's so good. It really is, and I think that's a view that we're seeing. We're getting staffed up, and the new recruits are now be able to getting their time in, so they're out there on their own now, and it's very, very good to me to see that visibility that the RCMP have in our community. So I wanted to let you know that it's obvious to me that we're seeing it.
I appreciate that. We love seeing it too, so.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Gentlemen, thanks so much. Appreciate you coming in.
Councillor,
Thank you, guys.
14.2, we have the report from our corporate officer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Good to have you here.
I'll just highlight a few things in my report. First of all, in regards to the lease agreements for city facilities, we did have a conversation last committee of the whole, and I'll just wrap up. The big ticket items that council agreed upon, and if I've got it wrong, I'd like you to let me know. And the fee for service, the current fee for service that's provided to each of the facilities will remain the same. In regards to utilities, the city will continue to pay the utility costs for the leases within those facilities. Building maintenance, the city currently assumes the cost of maintaining the building envelope, and the leasee assumes the cost of routine building maintenance. And insurance costs will be the responsibility of each nonprofit organization. So I'm hoping I got that right. I will be meeting with Ross, and we will be starting to meet with the various leaseholders, hopefully in the next month or so. The next item, Chamberlain Park encroachments. We did schedule a public meeting on June 6th from 7 to 9 at the Calvin Kirk Center. The mayor will be chairing that public consultation and just go over what we've done since the last public consultation, which is basically anything to do with the title and the dedication of the property. It took quite some time to get that to a point where council is able to provide some options moving forward. So we'll present those options. I think there's 4, and then just gather public feedback, and then hopefully bring that to a close. After budget approval, we've had lots of tenders out. There's been 10 posted since budget approval, so Cindy's been very busy with that. The last item, there's paving projects. There's 2 of them, 112th Avenue and 92nd Avenue, that are both scheduled for this summer, and there's sidewalks associated with them as long as they get through the alternate approval process. And today at 4:30 is the deadline for that. To date, Only 6 out of 32 are opposed to the 112th Avenue project, and only 4 out of 18 are opposed to the 92nd Avenue project. So it looks like it will go ahead, but they do have till 4:30, and sometimes there's a petition that goes around that can come in at the last minute. So at this point, it looks good for proceeding. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Brenda. Any questions, comments? Councillor Jacko?
On the, when we talked about the lease agreements, we talked about possibility of lease fees or somehow recovering some money from these organizations. And considering, you know, the fact that we're going to be digging fairly deep for, you know, dealing with operational costs, and I can appreciate, you know, the utilities aspect of it, especially with, you know, some of the lessees that are using a lot more utilities than normal. For example, KPAC. I'm just wondering about if there's a way that these lease agreements don't preclude future considerations of maybe fee increases, lease fees, or considerations of the fee for service and that type of thing. If you're planning to put some flexibility into the lease agreement that will allow us maybe on an annual basis to review those types of things.
Yeah, through your worship, that's quite common to put in a clause to review annually, so that I don't see a problem with that.
Because I mean, for this year, like, we haven't dealt with this issue yet really through our, the longer term issues. They're still coming up, but you never know. I mean, once you start trying to identify places where you can reduce operational expenses or increase revenue, these may be targeted. Now, the other thing on the utilities, how do you plan on identifying sort of an initial level of utility use and determine sort of the extra over and above what's normal?
Brenda?
Through your worship, actually, I haven't got my head wrapped around that yet. My thought was to meet with the user groups first and find out, since they're in the facility and using the facility, if there's ways that they feel they could improve or not. So it's going to be based on each facility itself, and I don't know the answer to that at this point.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess I'm thinking of normal heating and electrical, for a building that's sitting there. And then when you have specific uses, for example, the curling, where you'd have additional water use possibly, or whatever other uses that are related specifically to their activities. And it would apply to all of the lease situations, probably in different ways. But it's, I just want to ensure that we're getting the maximum that we can, considering the kind of where we're going with finances.
So, through your worship, couple pieces, add a little context. This council hasn't dealt with this since the election, these lease agreements. So really, we're going to go out and start working with some of these groups. We have a template, and we want to make sure we're approaching the right areas. It's a pretty big picture right now, but if there's something council no longer wishes to continue doing, we want to be able to have that discussion now. As far as utilities, it's noted in the report, and it's something that we've had some discussion about, where the users pay a percentage of that utility. We have found in some cases, more ownership over the utility usage, and they have some control over their costs, as you were mentioning, Councillor Javakov. So if there are increases, they are going to pay more if they're paying a percentage of it, and it's a static percentage. So we're looking at different strategies to try to, I don't want to say control, but work with the user groups in order to make that bring it to light, I guess. But really, we're pretty early. We have that template. We've now accepted that the leases and the agreements, they're all going to be a little different because there is a history on every single one of these. But really, we're just trying to capture the big areas. Fee for service, we're going to continue with that, it sounds like, in some areas. Utilities, we're going to try and have the groups contribute something and try to have them invested in it. Building maintenance, we own a lot of these assets. We've invested a significant amount of money in some of the mechanical systems, i.e. like the Calvin Kirk Center at $3.5 million, and so there probably is an interest that we want to continue to maintain that, just how intricate that system is. So we're really looking at a big picture. There's still some work to go, but really we're trying to use the committee of the whole, gauge council, where does this council sit on these agreements, and are there any big items we need to start talking about now? The gist of it.
Thank you. Anything further for Brenda? Thank you, Brenda. 14.3, we have a report from our Chief Financial Officer. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Cold?
A little.
Good.
All right, so I would like to just mainly bring about May 13, we finally send our bylaw, financial plan bylaw, and our tax bylaw to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So we completed our cycle for 2018-2019 budget. So now is the approval of Sophie. We're gonna be able to finalize it also and send to them within the deadline. Regarding to that motion that was verbally discussed on the last meeting about the goal of PRA allocation within the period of 7 years, we also included in the email as a certified motion. So this has been provided to the ministry in this communication. We sent last week, actually 2 weeks ago, out the tax notice. We have so far collected 13%, where 10% actually came with prepayments. And regarding to changes in the department, we had 23 local candidates for the position of Michelle, which was the accounts receivable clerk. And Tanya, which was also our tax clerk, was the well qualified, and so she's going to be taking that position. So we are in the process now of another selection process for Tanya's position as tax clerk. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank
I have
you.
a question. You've mentioned the percentage of tax collected so far, and the good percentage of that is prepayment. We pay interest on prepayment, and what's the rate, and what's the advantages to paying, having that money come in earlier and promoting that prepayment, because that levels our cash flow a little better rather than the. Can you explain the percentage, what interest rate we pay on prepayment, and what's the advantages to us doing that? Because I'm wondering if there's not some need for us to promote that prepayment to our residents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have the rate by heart. It's one of the provincial rates that we receive it. It's pretty well advantage compared if you would be leave the money on the bank. So the for cash flow purpose, it's actually better for us because we have money up front. So not sure more.
Okay. So
yeah.
maybe perhaps for our next committee of the whole would, and it'd probably be appropriate because we'll be further down the road in June to our tax season. But I wouldn't mind if you could have that bit of information. I wouldn't mind knowing what the rate is.
Yeah.
And how much we normally get, and then just a little explanation if you can in terms of What's the advantages to us promoting that prepayment and the interest we pay to residents for prepaying? Now, I know most people are locked into their mortgages and that, but there's a lot of people still pay. And what's the advantages of us leveling out as much of that cash flow for us as we can?
Yes, no, definitely I can put this on the next committee of the whole.
Further questions for Flavia? Anything now with the budget completed, everything's in place, that our surplus or anything that's changing at all for you, that you, water rates, the new water rates in the utility is doing its thing now? We're seeing some impact in there, I'm assuming?
Yes, now definitely we already start to see a little increase on the cash flow coming in with the increase of the water rates. So far, no complaint. We were pretty strong on the communication. We kind of put up front with pamphlets and explain to the public what's happening and why the need of the increase. So no issues with the increase.
Have you seen any impact, maybe more appropriate to Devin or Kevin later on, but about the demand on
consumption?
Water in terms of consumption? Is it staying, is it our normal purchasing of consumptions remaining
It's pretty constant. Yeah, normal.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Flavia.
Yeah.
Anything further for our Chief Financial Officer? Warmer coat? Do you need a warmer coat?
Next meeting, I will bring it.
We'll get you a rider down for the next one. Thank you.
Okay.
Our next report, we have the General Manager of Community Services. Good morning, Ross.
Good morning, Your Worship.
Welcome.
Members of Council, thank you very much. As illustrated in the regular meeting of Council, Community Services is quite busy moving into the summer. We had a couple presentations. It's apparent that Dawson Creek is a very healthy, active community, and I think we do a good job of promoting those sorts of things. Just a quick correction. Earlier, Your Worship, you reported on a couple of our staff members at the pool that were recognized by VitalLink BC. Veronica Murphy was one of the individuals, and the second staff member was Shannon Gillis. So very proud of those two individuals that were recognized last week. So primarily this morning I'm going to report out on fire and safety. With respect to the fire department, there were 128 inspections. March to April, that is. Calls for service were 60, and a total of 409.5 training hours were completed by the department. Highlight for the department, the firefighters have raised $10,500 for the BC Professional Firefighters Association Burn Fund. Wow. And Firefighters Charitable Organization, so a pretty substantial contribution there. The firefighters did assist with the Day of Mourning, which was hosted last week outside of City Hall here. With regard to safety, more good news in terms of incident reporting from the last quarter to this one. We had 10 less incident investigation reports, so hopefully we're doing something right in the safety department there. The Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committees are now in place, as is the Central Committee, and having regular meetings, so they appear to be going fairly smooth. Last week, a number of the new members of the Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committees attended BC Municipal Safety Association courses. There were about 2, I think, or 2.5 days that staff members participated in work site safety inspections, incident accident investigation, hazard identification, risk assessments, and safety committee member responsibilities. There's upcoming training coming up, contractor safety management and asbestos, lead, mold, and silica awareness. So our safety coordinator is doing some great work and working with the province and ensuring our staff get the appropriate training. Council received a letter from Dawson Creek Baseball from Caitlin Trable last meeting, and at Council's direction, staff regarding the use of Ecole Frank Ross ball diamond, which is one of the ball diamonds that is not being used for regular programmed activity. Minor ball, the numbers are up this year, and they needed one more field for some of their activities. So at Council's direction, staff reached out to minor baseball, and we were able to come up with a solution so they can use Frank Ross on a couple nights a week. We'll cut every 2 weeks and maintain that park. We're gonna move one of our washrooms from Kin Park over there and ensure there's a garbage receptacle, so we won't be committing any additional funds. Minor ball will also approach the field as using the Adopt a Park model, so they are going to contribute some maintenance on the off days. If there's some extra work that needs to be done on the weeks that we're not there, they're going to continue to do that work. So I think we've got a favorable response or a working relationship going forward with minor ball. And then finally, I believe council received notice the end of last week about meetings with our user groups and compiling data regarding rural use of city facilities. We have engaged the services of JCP and Associates to compile a participation data profile for arts, culture, sport, and recreation programs and services in our public facilities. The intent of the study is to really identify the users in our region who are not city residents and users who are from rural areas, D.E., Poo-Scoopy, Alberta, and other North Peace rural areas. So the consultant will be in town this week. We're going to meet Wednesday and Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Our staff have reached out to all of our user groups, both with a written invitation and a follow-up telephone call. So hopefully we'll have good response for that. We will have a kickoff meeting at noon with your worship and Duncan, myself, on Wednesday afternoon, and I think that's pretty much a snapshot for this morning.
Thank you, Ross. Questions, comments? Councillor Wilbur?
I just have one regarding grass cutting at the soccer pitches, and the board asked that they're wondering if it could be cut and then cut every 5 days, but cut shorter. And the reason being is the cost for line painting has gone up considerably. And so we did get a mowing schedule, and I think it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday that they got, and they just were wondering if that was something that could be looked at, that it was actually just cut shorter and cut less, like just every 5 days, and that would help with their paint costs. So I'm just putting out there, if a letter's needed to that, then they can provide one, but it was just something that had come up at their board meeting.
Through your worship, thank you, Councillor. I'll meet with our facilities parks person, discuss that. I'm sure we can come up with
Perfect,
something.
thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Kempf raised earlier about the 15th Street, Ballheim, the dog park. Folks are really ramping up. Evident they've got getting their structure in place, got a committee in place, got plans in place for fundraising, how they're going to maintain and look after it. Just looking for that. And perhaps Councillor Kemp can arrange to get together with you with the organizing group and start laying that out and get in front of council. Anything further for us? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job on the safety stuff. That's really good. And 14.5, we have a report from our General Manager of Development Services. Good morning, Kevin. Karen. Good morning.
So good morning. Just got a few things I'll start off with out of the report, and then I'll turn it over to Aaron to do our presentation on the Energy Step Code. As Brenda mentioned in her report briefly, capital projects are kicking off. 92nd Avenue, some work is supposed to start up there today. 112th Avenue could be as early as next week, so those things are getting going. Brenda mentioned sidewalks in her report. It's streetlights that are subject to the LAS. So it sounds like that's going to go forward. The projects are going to go no matter what. It's just whether the streetlight components were going to be included or not included, but it looks at this point that they are. Feedback that we've received from some folks is that they're looking forward to some streetlights, so that's good news. So yeah, hopefully we'll get going on that. That'll be great. Council received an email last week regarding Rosno trucking and some drainage issues that occurred last spring around that area. Just wanted to let you know that staff's reached out to the Ministry of Transportation because
Should have talked to them today when.
I did talk to them actually prior to the meeting and just let them know what the issues were. What is occurring there is that during spring runoff, a significant amount of water is coming from the Highway 2 ditch on the back side of those properties, and then running through some of those properties to the ditch that's on Victorina Drive, and it's just adding to the issue that, you know, spring melt, you know, delivers us. So I've asked Dean Daniels to take a look at it, although he's only got 5 days left, but hopefully he'll pass that along and they'll take a look and see if they can't do something to enhance that ditch and hold that water in there and to get it to go where it's supposed to go. So, and we've communicated that to the Rosno trucking, and we've also gone over and patched a bit that had washed away there in the spring. It was nothing too severe. So,
Kevin, on that, the design of the ditch and the water flow along Victorina Drive and the associated culverts that were put in there by the developers are sufficient to meet the engineered plan for that area. It's the additional water coming from the highway that's flowing across that's creating the...
That's what's worsening it for sure. And any time in spring, depending on how much snow you get and how fast it melts, you know, provides some challenges just about anywhere in town. But the issues down at the airport is generally it's very flat because it's an airport. There's not a lot of grade there. And so the ditches are as deep as they can be. The culverts are as big as they can be. You know, it is what it is. And generally, yeah, it works great. It's just for a couple days a year, we have some issues. And that runoff out of the ditch, highways ditch, certainly worsens it. So we'll take a look at it and see what we can do.
Kev, can you talk about driveways as well in general and culverts
Yeah.
for access to properties?
So driveways, there's always a bit of a disconnect or misunderstanding. Culverts, driveways are property owners' responsibilities. Those culverts are only in place for the property owner. You know, from a municipal standpoint, we have no need for those culverts in those ditches. It's only to access those properties. So those culverts are the owner or the responsibility of the owners, and they are actually the property of their owners. But the city does maintain the culverts in the spring, and we only do that to ensure that our roadway doesn't get washed away or something like that. But those culverts are, you know, owned by the properties they front. So just a bit of an awareness piece there. So some people, or I shouldn't say some, there's a lot of people that don't maybe appreciate that or understand it. So a couple other things. Jared Lacey's leaving the city of Dawson Creek. Friday's his last day. Some of you may have been aware of that or not. He's my utilities manager. So he's leaving and he's moving over to the regional district to be the solid waste manager. So we're, as a department, kind of looking at a few options and trying to figure out how we move forward, and we got a lot of things on our plate. So we'll sort that out in the coming weeks and look to replace him. And before I turn it over to Aaron, Aaron is actually, I think last day is June 14th. He's moving on to BC Transit in Victoria. So we'll be looking to replace Aaron as well. So with that, I'll, if there isn't any questions on that part, go ahead, Councillor.
I've got a couple questions.
Sure.
The issue of gravel on the boulevards comes up here every spring. It's you know, I hear people saying, oh, you know, the city put all this gravel on my boulevard and they should take it off. Have you ever looked at the volume of gravel we're using or the sanding? Like some of these boulevards, I mean, they've got a pile like 2 or 3 feet high, a windrow of gravel.
So we use a significant amount. I think we're in that 3,000 to 4,000 tons of gravel or sand that we use, and it all depends on the type of winter we have. If we get long stretches of cold weather and you have compact snow, we use an incredible amount because that rock that we put down, it scatters, it won't bite into that, you know, it's 30 below or 25 below, it won't bite into that ice, and we have to sand numerous times. It gets a lot of buildup, so we do use a significant amount. The reason we went to the material we use now about 20, 25 years ago is we used to use sand, a much finer material, which didn't look that bad and you didn't even notice on your lawn. But after about 5 or 6 years, it would build up and then you couldn't clean it off. And so this allows it to actually be swept off the lawns, although it is a bit of work. And it also allows us to reuse the material. We don't reuse it for sanding, but we do reuse it for graveling laneways or filling excavations and stuff, so we do get a second use out of the material.
Water samples, like we've got extensive sampling of the river and the intake. Just wondering if you must sample the water just as it goes into the plant?
So we
Do you
sample
sample it to the same level as what you sample at the intake?
So we sample at the intake, I believe, approximately once a week. Devin's still here.
Yep.
You can tell me.
Yeah, we sample at the intake once a week. We sample inside the plant daily, and we do weekly testing from the.
So I guess what I'm wondering is if there's a difference in the water quality, or I would assume that it's improved, but how much is it improved compared to what's actually coming out of the river because of settling and the UV in the reservoirs?
We do actually see a difference in the water quality. It does increase from the river to the water treatment plant, largely because of settling in our different reservoirs throughout the system.
So do you sample for all those same criteria at the water plant?
We sample for all the same and more.
Oh.
Yeah. At the river, we sample for, we have a probe for detecting if there's hydrocarbons or electroconductivity. We also sample for turbidity, which is dirtiness of the water and color. But at the plant, we sample for that, plus a large spectrum of other metals and materials, a huge spectrum of things, depending on what our sampling regimen looks like for that week.
So it's possible to have a look at it if I go up to the plant, or?
Absolutely. Well, we can show you our logbook, we can give you our test results.
We would provide that to all of council if maybe through committee of the whole would be more appropriate.
Yeah, I'd just like to see how much improvement there is due to the existence of the reservoirs.
And we were also talking further to that, Devin and I, just last week, about we're going to be implementing some even additional sampling and testing throughout at each raw reservoir, because that's going to give us indicators about how things are changing as it moves through the system, as well as when those reservoirs may need some maintenance, because as they start to build up with sludge in them from the settlement, we'll start to see increased turbidity in those reservoirs. And what you don't want is to have water coming into a reservoir that's not bad and actually worsen because the reservoir needs some maintenance. So we're going to do an increased level of testing as we go through.
Okay. So in one of the graphs here, it seems to show that the wastewater for April, or for March and April, there was no use of the wastewater. So is that an anomaly, or are we going to see a reduced ability to sell that water, or?
It's just simply market demand, and as I understand it, they haven't had a want for it at this point in time. And I believe they have talked about into the future here again, but right now there's nothing. We're very limited.
Because that's going to have a big effect on our, revenues, eh? 112th Avenue. So I had a call about the vote, like for the local area service. When is it completed, or when do you know how the vote went?
Today at 4:30, Brenda?
So all the votes are in, but you just can't tell us yet?
They have till 4:30 today to actually vote.
We don't know if they're all in. You only send or come in if you're opposed. And right now we have, Brenda will check her notes there, but
yeah, the 112th, is that the one you're asking about? So far we've received 6 out of 32 that are opposed.
Oh, that's all?
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I had, thanks.
yeah, for sure. Thank you. Any other questions before we move on to the step code? No? All right, I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Good
Good morning, and thank you for having me. So I'm going to go over a brief presentation about the BC Energy Step Code and what that might mean for Dawson Creek. What is the Step Code? What that could mean for the city. So the BC Energy Step Code is a provincial regulation originally put in by the previous Liberal government that local municipalities can actually utilize to incentivize or require a level of energy efficiency in any new construction that goes above and beyond the requirements of the BC Building Code. There are 5 steps in this Energy Step Code for Part 9 buildings, so that's mostly the single-family construction, that can gradually increase building performance as you move along those steps. The end goal and the last step is that by 2032, all new construction in BC will be required to be net zero energy ready, and that will become essentially a requirement in 2032. And the step code tries to give you those individual steps leading up to that. So, kind of coming from the provincial context, the Building Act, when that came into effect, got rid of a lot of the control that some municipalities had over the technical requirements that they could enforce that weren't in line with the building code. So the Building Act now provides consistency among all the municipalities in terms of technical requirements, except for some areas of unrestricted areas, and one of those areas is the BC Energy Step Code. What was kind of seen across the province is one municipality may require you to build to one certain standard of energy efficiency, while your neighboring municipality might require another one. And so there was different competing standards and everything, which made it difficult for builders to kind of plan for. And then along with that, there's also the climate action plan that the BC government's engaged upon, and they are looking at using the Energy Step Code as one of the main components of that plan to reduce fossil fuel greenhouse gas emissions. Kind of as I mentioned, there's a lot of standards out there right now, and a lot of different programs like Energy Star, Built Green, LEED standards, the ASHRAE. That, as you can kind of see in that list, there's just a lot of different standards. They have different requirements, different reporting requirements, and it's just a kind of hodgepodge of everything. So with the Step Code is trying to create a more unified standard for BC. So this the Step Code was developed in partnership by a lot of these partners you can see on the website, as well as consultation with local governments, non-government entities, utilities, and professionals. So just a kind of brief rundown of how the steps work, and this is for those Part 9 buildings, which is like the typical single family, which is the only thing that the Step Code covers outside of the Lower Mainland and the island, essentially. So for us, this is how it's going to be. So the lowest step, Step 1, is just called enhanced compliance. This step just tries to get the builders used to the kind of testing requirements of the Step Code. So instead of requiring people to meet any higher level of energy efficiency, it's just actually proving that they're meeting the level of efficiency that's currently set out in the BC Building Code. So what this means is that at Step 1, a builder would hire an energy advisor. They would do such stuff like a blower test to determine what kind of air leakage and everything, and to ensure that the building envelope is meeting those energy efficiency requirements. Step 2 and 3 are the lower steps of the Energy Step Code. That represents about 10% more energy efficient and 20% more energy efficient as they move up. These steps can be reached with kind of current building practices and current technologies, but they just essentially require a bit more thoughtful planning and specifically a lot more care to kind of the sub-trades and ensuring that that building envelope is as efficient as possible, as well as doing some mechanical improvements as well. Getting to step 4, this is where it's going to hopefully become easier as the market and the industry develops, and they're trying to get about 40% more energy efficient, but it will be quite hard to do under the kind of current industry and current technological standards, harder to do, that is. And then step 5 is the net zero energy ready, and that will be the requirement for all new construction in 2032. And here's just kind of showing how those line up with a bunch of those different energy standards. So what is net zero energy ready? So a net zero energy ready building essentially produces as much clean energy as it consumes, and they are about 80% more energy efficient than a typical new building, and they can use on-site or near-site renewable energy systems to produce the remaining energy they need. So what that means is they may not actually produce the on-site energy as well. That might be something that comes later, but the building will be ready for that. So there's a level of efficiency that they'll have to achieve. So there are kind of 3 key requirements of the energy step code measuring it. The envelope efficiency, which is the building, making sure that there's not a lot of air leakage, that there's right passive and active gains from the building envelope. Then there's the equipment efficiency. That's stuff like the HVAC system is kind of key point, and then the performance, and then getting into the performance based. So under a lot of requirements now, it is prescriptive, meaning that they have to do all these requirements to meet the standard. However, the performance based means that we set this standard, and then as long as they get there to that standard, the step code doesn't care how they get there. So it allows for more flexibility and will hopefully allow for some more innovation and just better building practices to be kind of happen naturally over the course of the step code. So just some of the getting here into the details about the envelope efficiency. So losses from air tightness and insulation, and then gains from solar gain and people and equipment. And so that's kind of one of those measures. When it comes to equipment, it's really just about the energy use in all those different equipments, from heat, water heating, ventilation, and lights and plug loads. And then performance requirements, get into more of these details. So there's going to be essentially a new profession really created for energy modelers to do these energy tightness testing and to do this kind of certification. And as I mentioned before, there's no prescriptive energy requirements. A lot of this has already, a lot of communities across BC have already been doing a lot of this work, but they were doing it to all these different requirements. You can kind of see here, starting at the lower ones, there was, Whistler, New West, were doing incentive programs to get people into these compliance. A lot of communities are doing it as part of rezonings, so that when they wanted to increase density, they would also have to increase the energy efficiency. And then other people were just requiring it as part of their building permit. So it wasn't an incentive, it was just a requirement. And then finally we have the slide of showing some of the examples. So Vancouver, this is a house that's constructed to approximately step 2 or 3. Richmond, townhouses to step 3. seeing North End. So 98% of the houses built since 2012 have been built to step 2. Langley's had a green building permit rebate, and so that's been doing about step 2. Surrey, and they have a density bonus program to get to step 3. The District of Kent's had 75 houses built to step 3. And there's also, of course, the Energy Step Code Council, which is a advisory council that provides information to local governments and industry on the best practices. So they publish a best practice guide. They have done costing studies. They have training and capacity programs, and they also provide the communications and training for councils and staff, builders, trades, professionals, and suppliers. And they also help some of those funding. They also monitor some of those funding programs. So that's kind of the brief rundown of the Energy Step Code.
Thank you, Eric. Questions, comments from council? Very interesting. Thank you. So thank you, guys.
Just
Kevin?
the reason we bring this forward, I mean, 2032 is a long ways out, but it's also an incredible far leap from where we are today to step 5 in 2032. Other communities are starting to make steps towards, and even if it's just educational, and start to make builders and developers aware that over time there is going to be, at least as we understand it today with the regulations that we have in front of us, that we're going to have to start moving that way. So we need to start making some incremental steps that direction.
Sure. Councillor Wilbur?
On that note, through you to staff, do we not already have something in place about being solar ready, or like, do we not have some of that in place? Like, would that not account for moving towards
So
that?
we had, as part of our previous building bylaw, that a requirement to be solar ready, which was really just to make sure that they had a chase and some piping from utility room to the ceiling, but that was it. This is really talking about increasing the energy efficiency of homes and also the requirement of testing. So like Aaron said, even at step 1, it's really built to the code that you have in front of you, but now verify it by bringing in an energy advisor and doing the testing. And so that's a step that you don't see right now. That's a challenge in the north. There isn't a whole lot of energy advisors, but as this starts to become more prevalent, there are probably going to be some of these folks that, that see a niche and will get out there, but chicken and egg a little bit. But over time, that appears to be where we're going.
Just to follow up, I just find it interesting that, and great examples, but the Lower Mainland, I mean, it's a big push for them. They have a much different climate, and I look at a young man we had here doing radon testing, which down there it's huge. It's almost one of those things that you also have to do, and yet it did not take off up here. So I think it's gonna be interesting for smaller northern communities on how we get ourselves to 2032, just based around our climate and having those resources available to implement that stuff.
Councillor Javeco?
So does the province not have a schedule of implementation, or do they just propose to give us a new building code in 2032 and say, here you are, folks? Or I don't understand the sort of the progression of the whole initiative.
So through your worship, the steps are actually meant to be determined by the local governments based off the local needs. So some governments, again, they may have been working to a higher standard already, so they can kind of take a quicker approach. Other municipalities might take more time to build along those different steps, getting up to step 5. So you might be, say for example, a year from now you may require step 1, and then maybe 2 years after that you require step 2. But the other government next door might require that faster or slower. So like those incremental steps are supposed to be based off of just the local government's needs.
So what's the magic thing that happens in 2032?
That's when that's going to be the requirement. So it's trying to get that's the kind of end date to.
So is that a new building code then that'll be implemented that year?
No, it's just they're saying in 2032 that you will need to meet step 5 of this program with any construction that's happening. So we have a current building code. That code will likely be revised as we go along throughout time, but they're going to say that by 2032 you need to be achieving building a home that's going to be 80%.
80% more efficient.
80% more efficient than this today. And
Insulation, windows, doors, all.
Because it adds a significant cost to the home, so, I mean, you can see the pushback. People come in here and build, do developments on spec, and they go by the building code, the requirements. So if there is no building code that requires, you know, a certain level, how do you, do they push the responsibility down to the municipality? And if they do, you've got 200 municipalities in the province that are all gonna be different. Like, I don't understand the
we're all
whole.
going to be in varying stages of trying to get to 2032 and the end goal of step 5.
If they do try.
If they stick to that goal, and 2032 is a ways out. But you're absolutely right, and that's why we're here in front of you today, is because if and when we decide to bring something forward to council and say, we think the city of Dawson Creek should go to step 1 and lay out a process of how we get there, there's gonna be pushback, there's costs. And so each step of the way, staff would come to council and say, okay, step 1, or if we get there, or step 2, or so on and so forth. And there's going to have to be an education, information plan that goes along with that, because you're absolutely right. Builders are not going to be overly thrilled with that. But what they're trying to achieve here is benefiting the end user, who is going to see a much more efficient home. That's their goal.
It doesn't just affect builders, it affects us. If we don't get people building houses when we need houses, then it affects us too.
Yeah.
Councillor Earl?
Yeah, so I mean, my concerns echo Councillor Javetkoff's, is what I see in the examples, whether it's the township of Langley with the green building permit rebate or the density bonus in Surrey, is we've been provided with an unfunded mandate by the provincial government that we are then, in order to incentivize this kind of building to take place and make a business case, we're going to have to forego revenue in the form of tax rebates in order to bring it in. So question being, what kind of supplementary funding is the province providing in order for us to get there if they are going to enforce this mandate? Simply because, yeah, it just looks like a case of, I don't know, like downloading, providing an unfunded mandate and saying, get there however you're going to. Well, you've got municipalities that are foregoing revenue to get there, which is not something we currently really have the option of doing. So is there any help or assistance from the provincial government with respect to supporting municipalities to reach this goal, or is it just?
Not that I'm aware of, but I think that might be something the UBCM or somewhere where you have those discussions and ask those questions. It's new for us. We're just, like I say, just kind of sticking our toe in the water, but I believe Fort St. John has done some work on this already, and they're, I don't know, they've even got to step 1 or maybe even to step 2. I'm not 100% sure, but I've heard they've been working on it, so we're just at the early stages.
And
Thanks.
And just for clarification, Your Worship, we don't have a report prepared to come to council. We're not there yet. We just wanted to take this opportunity through the committee of the whole to start the conversation.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Aaron, thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
And that ends our committee of the whole, and so we'll have a motion to recess to close, please. Councillor Kemp, Councillor Wilbur, all in favor? Opposed? Great. So a 5-minute break to get to closed.